Morning. I want us to continue with the quality of web application. Before we start developing a web application, we assume it's a project we are going to undertake. And once you make up your mind to undertake a project, you need to do some form of planning. So you have to identify the problem and how you are going to solve the problem at hand. So as you can see in this slide, we have a problem. And for us to be able to use a web application to solve that problem, we need to categorize the problem. When we need to analyze the problem. Once we're able to analyze the problem, we are going to identify which category of web application we are going to use, the characteristics, and also know about the quality properties that this web application should possess. Once we are able to do that, we come up with a model, and this model should consist of what? The technologies that we are going to implement into the model so that we come up with a solution that will be accepted by our users. So we identify the problem, and then once we identify the problem, we come up with various solutions. And in all of this, we should ensure that we are able to categorize which type of application will be best suitable, the characteristics that we have to infuse into it to solve the problem, and also the quality properties. When we come to the architectural structure of it, we design a web application using what? The latest technologies or modeling it and then we implement it. Now let's look at the types, the quality of web application. When we talk of quality of web application, we are talking about two things. We consider the external qualities that are visible to the user, and then the internal qualities that are visible to all it concerns what the developer. So the internal qualities is the responsibility of the developer. And the external qualities are the qualities that the users are going to see. They are going to that is what is going to enhance or improve users' work satisfaction. So we are going to look at some of these internal qualities and then external qualities. Once you are able to know the external qualities, you are then going to improve or enhance upon your web application. And this is going to enhance the usability of your web application. So one of the external qualities is correctness. What do we mean by correctness? When we say correctness, we mean that the web application is performing as expected. That is, it's doing what the specification requires it to do. So it behaves according to the specification during the before you start developing your web application, you have to find a user's requirements. And users' requirements are the specification they want or the things they want the app to do. So when you say the application or web application is performing correctly, then you mean that it's performing according to the specification with which it was designed or developed. Then we also talk about reliability. When we talk of reliability, we are talking about how the software is going to operate. Is it going to work as expected? That is one question we have to answer. So the probability that the software will operate as expected. And then in case of an error, will it still survive or is just going to completely crash? That is reliability. So how reliable is the software? And then we also talk about robustness. When we talk about robustness, we are talking about the ability for the software to behave reasonably, even in circumstances where it's difficult for it to behave as expected. You understand? When we are designing the web application, we have specifications that we want the web application to meet. So when we say robustness, we are talking about how the software will behave in circumstances that are not um, anticipated. How will the software behave? If the software is able to stand those circumstances, then we know that the web application or the software is very robust. So in the case of attack, let's say cyber attack, how would the software, is it going to completely shut down? Is it going to be destroyed? Or is it going to be unaccessible? These are some of the questions you will ask under robustness. But if the software is able to stand against all these unexpected circumstances, then we say that the software is very robust. Then we also look at actuality. When we talk of actuality of it, we are considering the content of the web application, the content. The content should be real. It shouldn't be something that is factualized. So it shouldn't be fake. Actuality is the content guaranteed. So when you are developing a web app, you should be mindful that the content is what the user is going to read. The content is going to sell you out there, and the content should be actual fact. It shouldn't be a fabrication. It should be factualized so that the user will see your web application. Yeah, this web application has actual content, and the content is guaranteed. And we also look at another external quality, that is user friendliness. How user friendly is your web application? How are the interfaces relating to each other, and how is the user able to navigate his or her way around without any difficulty? Let's say if the user is a novice, so it should be able to use your web application and use it with joy, use it to his or her satisfaction. If the user is an expert, he should be able to use the website without complaining, without any difficulty. That is what we mean by user friendliness. You shouldn't design a website that a user gets to this web application, a user gets there and he is confused, he doesn't know what to do. For example, some web applications, when they have forms and you have to fill, sometimes you get confused. You click on a button or you click on the text box and you don't know, the text box is not accepting anything. You don't know whether it's a compulsory thing you have to fill, but when you input it in text, it tells you it's wrong. Some will not even accept the phone numbers that we have in Ghana. Some, you see, it has to be so user friendly that you find your way around it without complaining. Once your web application offers that facility, you see that users are comfortable and they will always be patronizing or visiting your web application. Then efficiency. When you talk of efficiency, we are talking of how economical your web application or the usage of your web application is. In terms of time, in terms of storage, you should be able to interact with your web application without wasting so much time. If you want to download, you should be able to download, and you should the storage space there should be storage space enough for people to do whatever they want to do. And the time for request response time shouldn't be that much. It should be fast. There should be quick response. Once a user makes a request through the HTTP, there should be a response back within the shortest possible time. Download should be able to, if a user wants to watch something, the user should be able to watch within the shortest possible time. The user shouldn't sit down for about 30 minutes or 45 minutes before the whatever thing that he or she wants to watch downloads. So we should be the web application should be efficient. That is in terms of storage and what time. It should be very efficient. And then security. When we talk of security, we want to ensure that our web app is infused or has all the necessary features that help to what ensure security in the web application. If it's network, there should be firewalls. If it's we should be able to infuse all the necessary access control policies or usage control policies so that users' data or information cannot be accessed by unauthorized persons. So only authorized persons will have access to information that is what available, because we don't want a situation whereby in case there's an e-commerce site and you input your credit card details, and an authorized person will get access. We do want that we should. So we have to ensure that our web application is very secure by uh, implementing the necessary security features to prevent sorry sorry to prevent unauthorized access by people who don't have to access our web application for any dubious means. Then we also look at some of the internal qualities. When we talk of internal qualities, we are talking of the qualities that the developer of the web application has to concern about. They are very critical to the user developer of the web application, and one of them is portability. When we talk of portability, we have different operating systems around. We have different platforms. So what we mean by portability is that if the web application is developed, it should ensure, or the user should ensure that this web app can run on all the, for example, operating systems, be it Mac, be it Android, be it Linux, be it or whatever operating system. It should be able to work on all the systems, because users have different preferences. Some are using Macintosh, some are using Windows, some are using Linux, some are using whatever. So the web application, for it to be efficient, as I said, should be able to run on all operating systems without difficulty. That is what we mean by portability. And then we also talk of interoperability. With portability comes interoperability. When we talk of interoperability, we are talking about the situation whereby the web application that we have developed does not work in isolation, or is not a closed system, is an open system. So therefore, it should be able to work interlace with other systems that are around. That is what we mean by interoperability. It should be able to coexist with other systems and function as expected without any difficulty. And then we also look at, under internal qualities, we have to look at maintainability. What is the ability to modify the web application after it has been developed? Yeah, sometimes that is why when you go through the system development life cycle, we have maintenance and we have updates as well. So maintenance, there should be periodical maintenance. You should be able to add, you should be able to delete, you should be able to scale up your web application. If there are errors, you should be able to correct it. And then if you want to extend the web app or scale it up, you should be able to do that. So that's what we mean by maintainability. So in this slide, you see all the qualities that I've spoken about in the slide, and they all come together to provide a solution for a user. That is it. We don't have to compromise any of these qualities during our design. This is very important and significant. We have to consider all this when we are developing our web application. Okay. If we, for example, if we are navigating and there is a broken link, there is a problem for us, because it means that then the user cannot be able to move around as expected. So we have to ensure that everything is working as expected. Okay, now let's look at the development of web applications currently. You see, when the .com era came about, when there was the internet started at and there was a web browser, everyone wanted to do something. So people were using the ad hoc means of development. They didn't consider, they thought that, oh, they don't need to go and learn. Once they are able to do something, they have the knowledge and experience, they can develop websites. They did not see the need to sit down, study, and then come up with applications that are of high standard. Everyone was doing something just because it's trending. So everyone was doing something. And also people thought that web development is just reuse of existing application. So it's like I look at someone's web application or website, I copy and paste, I modify it, and I'm good to go. So this one became a problem. Also, some people think there was insufficient documentation of design decision. As I said, web application development is a project. So once it's a project, you have to go through some steps so that you will arrive from the beginning to the end so that you achieve your target. So if there is insufficient documentation of design decision, you don't have the design. So how are you even going to, you've not outlined the design that you want. So how are you even going to be able to go through and come up with a consistent website that's what has all the necessary things embedded inside? And then there's isolated activity, no design of change. People just do things anyhow. It's one way. There is no change, there's no variety. It's because you copy and paste. So people are just going to say, let's see this one's idea. They copy and change and they modify it to suit their needs. And finally, there was no methodological approach to design as we have in software engineering, that we have software engineering principles, and we know we have to follow sets of scientific methodologies to arrive at a certain decision. There was no scientific backing or methodology that people had to abide by. So everyone was doing what they think was right. So we were not having web application that meets the standard that now we are having, as we are having currently. So this led to a lot of issues. And some of these issues, we ended up having only web application that were only document centered. They were centered, they were static, could not do so much, full of pages, pictures, text, and hyperlinks. They were not doing so much good and full of graphics. And then the misconception that developing web application is easy because there were tools that are readily available, like HTML editors and form generators. So people didn't see the need to um, follow a certain methodology or approach, or sit down and learn and then come up with high quality web application, because of the misconception that web applications are simple due and the available tools are available to aid you in creating any web application that you want. And then there was no use of know-how of discipline. As I said, with software engineering, system analysis, and design, we have principles that we have to follow. But with web application, before there was no discipline that people had to follow. So everyone was doing what they thought was right. So if you are fortunate and you come out with a nice or acceptable web app, then people will go to your web app, let's say website, they view the source code, they copy, and then they modify to suit them. And there was no human computer interaction. That is, they design without considering the user that they are designing for. That is human computer interaction. That when you are designing anything, any product, whatever, that is not going to be used by you. You have to consider the user. You have to consider the user's cognitive thinking so that you don't overburden the user. You have to consider the user's ability psychologically. You have to know the signs of the body, how the user, the memory works. That is under human computer interaction. You have to consider this so that when you are designing, you design and it's usable by the user. You just can't sit in your house and design anything and expect the user to be able to use it and use it effectively. No, you have to consider the user. Once you are able to consider, that is why in some methodologies, they require that you will involve the user throughout the stages or the phases of the design so that the user, wherever the user finds a problem, you'll be prompted and then you correct it so you are able to design to meet the user's requirement. Good. When these things are not factored into web design, then it means you are designing an app that you alone are going to use it. No one has a problem with that. But if you are designing an app that you want people to use it, then you have to design according to what the user specification or requirement. That's why we have specification or requirement, the needs of the user. You have to consider that. So in the at the end of the 1960s, there were issues with web development. Why were there issues? Because the people were just doing anything. People were not following any kind of discipline to come up with what web as we have today. Today we have web engineering principles, and web engineering principle is similar to the software engineering principle. Basically, they are the standard that has been spelled out for users or developers to follow to develop web applications. So those crises, that crisis that we had in the end at the end of the late 60s, no more exists. Come to the principle that has been developed, that's web engineering principle. You follow the web engineering principles and you are able to come out and design a web application that is what going to be accepted by your user, that is of high quality, both externally and internally. And then you are good to go. So the question is, what is the difference between software systems and web engineering or web application? And is web engineering the same as, or can we equate web engineering to software engineering? Definitely, web engineering principles help us to add that standard or scientific standard that help us to what? Develop web applications that are going to be accepted by users. And these principles have been developed by the W3C, the Worldwide Consortium. So to spell out everything that one needs to do, they come up, for example, they came out with for the HTML5 for web development, and they came out with PHP 7. So these are the standard that has been spelled out for you developers to use in order to come out with for web applications that are of high quality that meet the specification of the user. Okay. And in the same principle, software engineering principle are what we developers use in developing what software, because we have web engineering, web applications reside on the web, and software systems can be also on the web, whatever. So web engineering principle can be equated with software engineering principle. You follow the principle, then you come out with what is desired, what is accepted, what is accepted as a standard, and users will be able to use these applications without any problem. Now let's talk about web service definition. What is web service definition? When we say a web service is a set of methods exposed through a web interface. What do I mean by this? It is accessible through what? One, it is accessible through HTTP, that is the HTTP protocol. Two, it provides internet access to RPC like calls, and that defines the service. What do I mean by RPC? RPC is remote procedure calls. So through the web service, you can have what? And or you can have a remote procedure call with another device remotely. Good. And then web service is also true. Web service messages are encoded in what? SML dialect. And this SMS dialect is called a Simple Object Access Protocol also. So a web service is a set of methods that is exposed through web interface, and these access is accessed through HTTP protocol, provide internet access to remote procedure calls, and then the language that is used is the word simple object access protocol. And then we have the web service model. The web service model assumes the services are always available. It basically assumes that the services are always available. There is no interruption in the service that is going to be offered. So what is the benefit of a web service model? One, it can be used from any platform, uses a standard well-known channel, it is routable and will pass through most firewalls, and then it uses the same security mechanism as any website. So, but benefits of web service model. The web service model ensures that, or tells us that the web service is always available. And what is the benefits of this? Web service uses a special architecture because one, it can be used from any platform. You can have access to it from any platform. It uses a standard, well-known channel, and then it's routable and will pass through most firewalls. So it also uses the same security mechanism as any website. You can even verify this for yourself. Check or go visit various websites and find out the security feature that you see that it's consistent, because there is a standard that everyone is following. You see that the mechanisms are similar in all the websites. So in an essence, I can ask you, what are the benefits? What is a web service model, or what is a web service? What's a web service? What is the benefit? And then you can explain that to me or produce that for me. Then we also talk of service-oriented architecture. Basically, is a framework that provides a set of fundamental operations through the web service. You understand? That is the service oriented. So the framework that provides what? The services that we want on the website. Good. And then may also provide local services using our Windows, your Windows operating system. It can also provide a local service using your Windows. And then all applications based on that framework share common services. So once you are on the framework, you don't need to create any other framework again. That framework can be used or can share common service on the framework. All applications on the framework can share common service. You don't need to recreate the same functionality for each new application. So the application on the framework can use or share common service that are available on the framework. And then it can provide those same service to partner business suppliers and customers. So if you have linked your web app or your website to your partners or suppliers, that same framework service that is provided by the framework can be provided to these people that are linked or connected to your website. An example of the web service-oriented architecture is the Longhorn's Indigo model. It's a model that was developed by this man, the Longhorn, and then that model is service-oriented. It's available. If you want to read more on that, you can do that. Okay, so in conclusion, we can say that as compared to traditional application, web application reside on the web, and their tags, they have different tags, different characteristics, and different styles. So they describe a wide range of people or stakeholders that are going to be involved. They have wide range of tags, interaction styles, and complex technological or infrastructure that have been put together in a context that is a web app as compared to traditional application. And then your web app should have usability attributes. Once the web application is developed, how usable is your website or web application? And this is determined based on the web application characteristics. I told you we have different types of web application. So the type of application or the type of web application, then the type of characteristics they possess. And this is even helpful for the developer. If the developer gets to understand the problem of a user or the requirements, then the developer will be able to know what type of web application to develop to meet the user's requirements. So the usability attributes can be determined based on the web application characteristics. And conversely, the usability attributes that are important can dictate possible characteristics that need to be considered by the web application. I hope I have captured everything and explained everything in this slide for you. So the next thing I'm going to try to do is the PHP. I'm going to explain PHP in the slide. I don't know the number of slides I gave to you, but I'll explain that and we are good to go.